Welcome to episode 39 of the Bankroll Challenge. We're playing a lot more 2-5 this episode as well as going forward, and barring a huge downswing, it's most likely going to be my main game moving forward. We're actually not even too far away from shot taking 5-10 as well, maybe about 200 hours of 2-5. So here's the upswing, and I'll see you guys in the hands. Kicking things off here, we have 5-3 offsuit in the big blind. Cutoff has limped, button over limp, and small blind completed, and we check our options. So 4 ways to a flop of Jack, 4, Deuce, 2 spades. When it checks to me, I'm going to lead out here. I've got the biggest range advantage here. I'm the only one that's going to have Jack, Deuce offsuit here. So I bet 5, cutoff calls, button raises to 30 now, gets back on me, and because I just have way more 2 pairs here, I definitely need some bluffs, so I bump it up to 100, cutoff folds, and button makes the call. Off to a turn, which is really nice. It's another deuce. Now a lot of my hands have voted up, as well as Jack 4 still feels really good about betting this turn, because she's not going to have trips, right? There's no Deuce X besides Deuce X of clubs that can raise the flop with a backdoor flush draw, but now that that's there, like, she just can't have a 2 here, calling the flop raise. So she might have pocket 4 sometimes, but I think most likely she's just got like a decent Jack, so I'm going to keep applying pressure. Go about half pot here, 125. Same sizing I would use with all my full houses and top 2. But she doesn't give a shit and jams all in. So it looks like she's either got pocket 4s or just a Jack that wants to go with it. Obviously nothing we can do here. And we lose $225. Ouch. Let's see if we can turn things around. We're looking down at 2 limps, and I bump pocket 7s up to $30 on the button. Small blind 3 bets to 120, folds back to me. Considering we're a little bit deep, I do go ahead and make the call. He also has been 3-betting quite wide, and has been folding some 4-bet bluffs that I've been put in, so his range isn't necessarily just Jacks plus and Ace King. But anyways, we go to a flop of 6-5-4, 2 clubs. Amazing flop for me and for my range, and surprisingly enough, he bets. And even more surprising, it's small. It's $100. It's almost a range bet on a board that's probably the worst one for him. I think calling is definitely the standard play. It could be ahead of all his ace-high holdings, which are going to be quite a few. And a lot of hands just miss this flop. But also, if he has overpairs, we could put them in a really rough spot with a raise here, as well as help to deny equity from his, ace-king, ace-queen type holdings. So I go ahead with small raise up to 250. Definitely, I think a little bit unorthodox. I think calling is definitely better, but go for the raise and doesn't think for too long and lets it go. So picking up a pretty nice pot there. On to the next hand. We open up ace deuce of spades under the gun, and the same player as last hand 3-bets us to 50. Goes around to the small blind who cold calls, and now it's back on me. And with the small blind cold calling, I think there's a little bit of extra dead money, and it sort of incentivizes me to take a more aggressive line here. Although this hand plays really well multi-way, even though we're sort of out of position. But I think sometimes going for the 4-bet bluff is fine here, so I go ahead and raise it up to 175. I like that sizing. The player that 3-bet snap folds, gets around to the small blind who thinks for quite a while, about a minute, but also releases. So picking up another $100 there. Loving life. Moving things along, under the gun player has limped, and I'd like to ISO him heads up in position. So I raise the king 9 offsuit on the button to 25. Big blind does make the call as well as a limper, so we're 3 ways to a flop, which comes down okay. It's 9, 8, 7, 2 clubs. When it checks to me, this board's not going to be too good for me, as well as my opponent's just going to connect pretty hard on this flop. So I just go ahead and check it back. My hand's not that strong, and we see another 8 on the turn. Part that's going to be pretty good for me, but big blind disagrees and pots it for 75. Under the gun folds, and we can't go anywhere with top pair good kicker, so I make the call. Off to a river, which is the 4 of spades. And my opponent doesn't take too much time at all and just overbets to 300. You don't really see too many bluffs like this too often, but he just bet that really quick, so I don't think he's got a straight anymore, as I think a straight just wants to think about things for a second before overbetting into what could potentially be a full house. But the thing is, I don't need to call this hand. I have so many full houses and straights that play the same way, as well as trips. Like, this hand's really weak. This is one of the weakest hands I get the river with, but I don't know. I just block full houses and something just doesn't feel right about this. So I toss in the call, expect it to be good, I think more than half the time. I don't know why. I wish I could explain it better, but I can't. So I call it 300, and he shows the Queen 10 of diamonds for the missed great draw. So we're going to take down another pot. We once again have ace deuce suited under the gun, and I raise things up to $15. We only get one caller in the hijack, so we're heads up to a flop. Really nice. It's 10, 8, 3, 2 diamonds. I like to check this time. I do like having some nut flush draws in my check range. Although hands like ace king, ace queen, ace jack probably make more sense to check, but I don't know. I decided to check this one, and my opponent fires out for $35. Pot size bet. With an overcard as well as a flush draw can't go anywhere, so I make the call. See a beautiful 9 of diamonds on the turn. We make the nuts. I check it over, and he continues firing pretty big again for 75. I'm just going to set the trap. It looks like he's got something really big here. And I don't want to blow him off or anything like that, as well as it's nice to have really strong hands in your check back range, or in your check call range. So I call again, and river isn't great. It's another 8. I check it over, and he fires out once again, but a bit smaller now. Only 150, so it's like 66% pot. And I asked him how much he has behind, and I sort of miscalculated it. I thought he had 800 total, including this 150 bet, so I thought he only had 650 behind. But turns out he's got 950 total. But so I wanted to have some flushes that go all in to balance with my ace of diamonds 10x hands, which I've got 3 of. So I thought ace, deuce, 4, and 5 made the most sense to be jamming here to balance that out. Just because they don't block too many of his flushes, right? Like 5, 4 of diamonds is probably not going to call pre-flop, some of the time. So I think having those low cards is nice because it makes him more weighted towards flushes. So praying he doesn't have a full house, and I go all in, and he's deep in the tank. Looks like he's got at least a straight here. Keeps on thinking. Unfortunately, he does make the fold. Don't know if I like my play there, but yeah. We got another suited ace. The button straddle is live, small blind has completed, and I bump things up to $40. One player calls, and then the small blind calls as well, so we're 3 ways to a flop. We flop another flush draw. King 8-5, 2 hearts. Checks to me, this is definitely a board that's better for me, so I start with a small bet of 40. Low jack calls, and small blind gets out the way. We head to the turn, which is the 7 of spades. Card that's probably going to be better for him than me, so I go ahead and check here. And my opponent checks it back. So off the river, which, amazing. 9 of hearts. I think about leading out here, but my opponent kind of looks like he wants to bet. So I just check it over. He thinks for a while, starts reaching for chips. Unfortunately, he is a very smart man and checks it back. We are not going to get any more money for our nuts. So the small blind player has purchased the button, and I am on the button with ace-3 offsuit. Seeing as I'm in position, I've got an ace and only one player to get through. I try and steal it. I raise up to 25, and my opponent makes the call. Off to a flop, which is queen 5-4, 2 spades. Pretty nice. We got a gut shot and overcard, as well as some backdoor flush draw possibilities with just 3. So I start off with a bet of 35, sizing up here, and my opponent calls. Off to the turn, which is the 10 of spades, and we can probably rep some flushes now. So he checks it, and I go ahead and bet 60, about half pot for 3 to a flush on the turn, and he calls. Off to the river, which is the 5 of clubs. He checks it once more, and I just have ace high here. I gotta go for it. But I miscalculated the pot. I thought the pot was 120, and I meant to bet 100 into that. But the pot's 240. I meant to bet 200, so I only bet 100. But luckily, my opponent does make the fold. Bit of a blunder there. We are now over at Park Casino. We have a middle position raised to 15, and I look down at 10-7 of hearts in the big blind. A reasonable price. I toss in the call. Let's see a flop. Jack 8-4, 1 heart. I check it over to him, and planning to call most bets. But he bets really small, 1/3 pot. Against this sizing, I'm more incentivized to raise, especially since I'm going to be raising a lot of my Jack X type hands here. So I bump it up to 40, and he makes the call. We are looking for a 9, a heart, a 6, or a 5 to keep barreling. We get a queen. Not the best card, but we do have some Queen Jack that has just improved to 2-pair, but we also have a lot of Jack X that is going to want to check back this turn, so I give up with this hand here, just on the turn, and my opponent checks back. Off to river, which is the 5 of hearts, and now with 10 high, we have to go for it. I hate this check raise flop, check turn, and then try and bluff river line because it just never works. But gotta give it a try, so I fire it out for half pot. Same sizing I would use with a hand like Jack 10, and luckily, my opponent folds. Very surprised to see that one get through. Not a big hand, but just nice to take that one down. On to the next hand. This one's against a pretty formidable reg. I raise ace-king off to 15, hijack calls, and the reg squeezes from the small blind to 60. A little on the small side, but I've got ace-king, and against that small sizing, I'm definitely putting the 4-bet. In position, I like 2.2x, so I go 130, hijack folds, and small blind makes the call. I think I'm going to try some larger 4-bet sizings, like 2.5x in position, 3x out of position, just because the games are quite deep. But more on that later. So he calls, and we go to a flop of Jack, Jack 4. Really good flop for my range, so when he checks, I start off with a bet of 90, and he makes the call. Off to the turn, which is the 5 of clubs. Pretty nice now. We can bluff club rivers, and he checks it over. I just don't think he's going to have too much Jack X here. Like, Ace Jack's not really wanting to call a 4-bet out of position, nor is King Jack offsuit. So we could just have, you know, like some of the suited Jacks, like Queen Jack suited, King Jack suited, Ace Jack suited, but a lot of those hands aren't really going to be squeezing from the small blind for most live 2-5 regs, but I don't really know what he's squeezing with. So if I still had an overpair, I'd still be betting it here. So I go ahead and bet 300. A little bit too big. I meant to go about 250 to get stacks in on the river. This is like, yeah, I don't have enough behind to make this bet this big. And unfortunately, I do get jammed on. Nothing to do here but fold. It looks like he's just got a jack. So yeah, that one's not going to work. We've added back on, back to battle. I raise pocket 7s up in early position to 15 and get 3-bet to 60 by the player on my direct left. A little bit big, 4x in position, but I've got 7, so I'm not going anywhere just yet. Off to a flop of ace 9, 6, 2 spades. I check it, and my opponent checks it back. Big mistake. No, I'm kidding. I don't even think that's a mistake. I don't think you're actually supposed to range bet boards as the 3-better that have an ace, and the 2 cards below that are in between a 9 and a 6. I actually think you're not supposed to range bet those, but I'm not sure on that. But looks like he's got hand like kings through 10s, so the turn comes the 10 of hearts. I now have blockers to the straights. I'm going to start bluffing here, and it's going to be big. I put 125 out, really put those hands, kings, queens, jacks, in a really tough spot. Opponent thinks for a bit and makes the call. Off to a river, which doesn't help us. It's just a 5 of hearts. And we're just going to have to go for it here. I'm going to bet pretty big if I had a straight here. So same thing with a bluff. I fire out $400, slight overbet. Opponent thinks for a little bit and folds. Nice. We are going to get that one through with just the 7s. So cutoff is open to 25. I 3-bet the ace queen of hearts to $80 on the button. Folds around to the big blind, who puts in the cold 4-bet to 230. I am so excited. I finally have a 5-bet jam bluff spot that actually makes sense. Right? Cutoff, I'm ISOing quite wide. But big blind's a reg and knows that, and he's definitely going to be 4-betting quite wide here. So I'm very excited to stick the money in. Probably going to get the fold most of the time until cutoff steals my thunder and jams all in. I was really excited about that. We have to fold. Big blind calls, and turns out big blind and us had the exact same hand, and cutoff had pocket 10s and holds, but next time. That is it for episode 39. Take a look at this view. Little Microsoft building there. It's really smoky from the fires in Kelowna. So yeah, that is it. 2 2-5 sessions and a very short 1-3 session where I won $4 whole. I had to jump out of that last 2-5 game. It was really good. Just a bit too busy prepping for my road trip. But here's one of the hands that I was sort of in. Under the gun limps, +1 raised to 15, middle position calls. I defend the big blind with 7-4 of diamonds, and the limper calls. So 4 ways to flop becomes 9-7-6 rainbow.
Checks the original razor, best 35. Middle position calls, I fold. Original limper makes it 100. Original razor calls. The middle position player now back raises to 500. The limper calls, and then the original razor back raise jams all in for 1.2k. Middle position calls for 1.1, and the limper now calls for his 800. Yeah, it's a three-way all in on 965 rainbow on a single raise pot. Turn is a 9. Limper immediately tables his hand. He's got 9-6 of clubs. Yeah, just a top and bottom pair. And river is a blank. It's like a deuce of something. Original razor had 8-5 of spades for the flop bottom end of the straight. Middle position had 7-6 off for bottom 2 pair. And the limper scoops with 9-6 of clubs. A nearly $4,000 pot. And I had to jump out of it. So the 2 sessions we played, first one I was in for 1,000, out for 1,775 for a win of 775. Then I won $4 and won 3. And then this game I played, I was in for 1,500, out for 955 for a loss of 545. So that's a total win of like 200 something. I'll put it up there. It's gonna bring the bankroll from just under 12,000 to, I believe, $12,207. First time I hit 12,000, that's really nice. Definitely feeling a lot more comfortable in 2-5 games, as I'm sure you can tell from my play style. It's gotten a lot more aggressive. I'm just getting a really good feel for the game. Yeah, really enjoying 2-5. Yeah, I just love it. And I'll see you guys all in the next episode. Thank you so much once again for watching.